So yeah, I'm studying pharmacology, a Bachelor of Science with a management minor, and I'm currently working as a consultant for a Boston Consulting Group. And at school, I've taken on more of science roles. So at school, I'm a first responder for MCERT, as well as I will be joining a research lab in the fall semester.
Awesome. Thank you, Adeline. And our next panelist, Catherine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine. You can just say Kat. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also entering my fourth and final year at McGill in Science. I'm studying anatomy and cell biology, which is a different major within like the life science group here at McGill. A lot of my extracurriculars revolve around MCERT and research. So I'm currently a research student in the Faculty of Medicine, and I'm also starting an internship at Montreal's Clinical Research Institute here. And on MCERT, I've been a first responder for 2 years now, and I'm joining the executive team as a director this year.
Perfect. Nice to meet you, Kat. And our next panelist can introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Charles. I am a recent graduate from McGill University. I majored in political science. I was involved in the SMU, which is our student organization for undergraduate students, as part of DriveSafe, which is a service that drives students home for free. So if you're out at night, kind of don't want to pay for an Uber, yeah, that's the service you call. Currently, I am working full-time, and I'll be joining full-time in September as a policy and research development analyst for the Canada Border Services Agency, which is an agency for the government of Canada. So if you're interested, I know there's some discussion about government jobs. If you're interested in joining as a student or anything like that, feel free to send me a message.
Nice to meet you, Charles. And Julian, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so hey everyone, my name is Julien. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm going into my fourth and final year of a BSc in biology at McGill. So I'm doing something called the liberal major in biology, which basically allows me to have 2 minors. So it's a less credit, less intensive major. And so my first minor is in neuroscience and my second minor is in computer science. And so this summer, I received the SUR award to continue some undergraduate research with Professor Tomoko Oyama. And so I'm doing all of that research remote, actually, from my home in Ottawa, saving a little bit on rent, but also getting very good at using CatMade, which is basically a large image server where I'm able to sort through pictures of neurons and try and complete a connectome project. During the year, I also work as a laboratory assistant in the Vogel Lab, and I also serve as vice president of the McGill Fencing Club. And so fencing is that weird sport that you might have seen on iCarly that Freddie Benson does. And so that's a sport that I've been involved with since about the 7th grade, I think. And so I was very fortunate to be able to continue competing at the university level with McGill.
Cool, thank you, Julian. And we'll move on to our panel discussion. So we'll have a start off section followed by academics, experiences, residence, and financial aid. So to start off, why did you choose McGill University and what are the best parts about campus? So we can start with Adeline.
Sure. So I chose McGill because I wanted to be close to home. But I still wanted to get out of my city. So Ottawa is where I'm originally from. And my parents told me that if I were to leave home, I should choose a school with a good reputation. And I did my research and found that McGill has a really reputable science program with a lot of opportunity to get involved in research, as you can clearly tell by some of the other panelists here, and some really great extracurriculars to get involved in.
Awesome, thank you. And Kat?
Yeah, kind of the same idea. I wanted to be somewhere that was like close enough to home, but not in my hometown. To be honest, choosing your university is really hard. It's something that's a little bit different from person to person. I had actually accepted an offer to another school before choosing McGill, but in the end, it was the right place. I love that it's in the heart of the city. The campus is like a 5-minute walk from anything you want downtown. You can get pretty much anywhere. You'll never exhaust all the food places to eat, and it's also really bike friendly.
Awesome, thank you, Kat. And Charles?
Yeah, I think all the panelists are from Ottawa, actually. I'm the only one from Toronto. But I actually was looking at the UBC or even Sciences Po in Paris to kind of get away from home, but financial costs were real, and I looked at Montreal. And and I did a campus visit, and I saw myself, in Montreal for 4 years. So that's why I went to McGill. I also wanted to work for the federal government, so I really needed to practice my French. Growing up in Toronto, we do not have any exposure to French. We have to compose it for at least 6 years. So definitely McGill did help me with that, and that's why I ended up going to McGill.
Thank you. And Julian?
Yeah, so I think these guys all kind of gave out really good points as to why McGill is an attractive spot to choose. For me, kind of the same situation being from Ottawa, the natural progression to the big city is Montreal. But aside from that, Montreal is a very, very affordable city. And that was kind of the biggest draw for me when deciding between, centers like Toronto and Vancouver. Just the price of rent and things like milk is just a lot cheaper in Montreal. So that was very attractive for me as well. And besides that, McGill offers a world-class education. There's students from all over the world that come to Montreal to study at McGill, and it's a great environment to be able to learn and grow. I also had 2 older siblings studying at McGill, and so that definitely helped me in my decision as well to be able to go over to their house when I needed a nice home-cooked meal.
Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of Ottawa panelists. I'm also actually from Ottawa, which is a nice coincidence. But yeah, I go to school like not as close as Montreal, so yeah, definitely would have been a more feasible option. So yeah, awesome. Okay, so next question is common mistakes that first years make at McGill, and in talking about that, what would you tell your first year self? This time we can start with Kat.
Yeah, sure. This kind of differs. I think a common mistake that came to mind for me was thinking that you can't talk to profs or ask questions. When you join U0 or U1 at McGill, a lot of your classes are going to be huge. They can have like up to 1,000 students. And when you're in a classroom like that, it's like so scary to raise your hand and ask a question. And I remember all year, first year, I was like, you know what, I'll just figure it out later. I did not figure it out later. So I would definitely recommend being comfortable asking questions. There's a lot of support in your classes. You'll have like teaching assistants as well as professors who are willing to answer your questions. So my word of advice for my first year self is if you can't Google it and the friend sitting next to you doesn't know either, chances are you should just ask because someone else is wondering the same thing.
That's a good tip. And Charles, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I came into McGill like the week after Froch. I started working at the Starbucks near McGill. I was maxing out on my OSAP. I had an RESP from my parents. I had savings, but financial assistance, you really need it. And McGill's very stringent with their scholarships. So I was working, I think, about 15 hours a week, starting first week of school. But just kind of reflecting on that, obviously it depends on your independent financial situation, but I would recommend trying to, at least for the first year or first semester, taking advantage of the fact that you're first year, explore the city, meet new people, join clubs, enjoy yourself. You just moved to a new city. If you did, take advantage of that, enjoy, and you can get into it later. But again, that's really dependent on your own personal circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. And Julianne, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So mine might seem a little harsh there, but I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind that grades you got in high school are not going to be the grades you're going to get at McGill necessarily. There are some people that manage to do it, and my hats are off to them. I unfortunately was not one of them, but that's okay. And that's kind of the learning curve of McGill and first year at McGill. A specific anecdote that comes to mind is my calculus class. I did really well in calculus in high school, and I'm sure many of you that are coming to McGill also did as well. But Professor Trudeau does not care about what you got in high school. He cares about you doing well on his final exam. So, first year, there's a lot of things that are going on. There's a bunch of new people. You're in a new place. You're trying new things for the first time. So take it easy on yourself. Like, kind of keep those things in mind and remember that you have 4 more years to bring your GPA up. And a lot of the times, graduate programs and medical schools and professional schools, they don't even look at your first year. So try and keep that in mind. Try not to be too stressed out about it, and have some fun.
Yeah, for sure. Even though I don't go to McGill, like that advice is definitely very applicable to I would say all post-secondary schools. Definitely, there's definitely a pretty big curve. The same mindset like the calculus and everything. But yeah, thank you for sharing. And Adeline, do you want to finish us up with this question?
Yeah, for sure. So my biggest advice to myself is to be really open to meeting new people. I came from Ottawa having known a lot of people. Kat is actually one of my really good friends from high school. And it's really, really easy to get stuck into like a little loop of staying with people you know, because it is a really unfamiliar environment. But if you can try to step out of your zone and take your comfort zone and take advantage of a lot of the social events, there's a lot of people who are international that you will never have had a chance to meet before. So really just try to go out there and experience things in your first year, especially while it's the time to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Adeline. And I think that perfectly actually transitions us to the next question, which is how is the social life, environment, culture like? So we can go over this section maybe briefly, and we'll start with Julianne this time.
Sure, yeah. So as many of you may have figured out by my name, I'm Francophone. I'm proud Franco-Ontarian. And so coming to McGill was actually the first time in my life that I was studying in English. And so for me, it was actually very surprising how little French there was on campus. And so I think that goes to show how much French does not have to play a role in your life if you don't want it to at McGill. That being said, I definitely encourage you guys to get out into Montreal and kind of take a look at the culture that exists within the city of Montreal. It's a very bilingual city, and if you speak English or French, you'll be able to get around without any problems.
Perfect. That's good to know. And Charles, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the opposite. I'm Anglophone, so I only spoke English. And coming to McGill in Montreal, I really did want to learn French. So like Julien said, it's a very bilingual environment, but it's also an environment that you can take advantage of to practice your French. So that's what I did, and that's what I wanted to do. So I made a lot of Francophone friends for Québécois, and I was able to practice like that. So if you're in the same position as me, I would say, take advantage of that, practice it, because I'm in Toronto right now, and there's no one to talk French to, and my French is deteriorating. So really, take the opportunity.
Yeah, I like that. I mentioned I was from Ottawa, so there's more of like a bilingual culture in Ottawa, but since I don't go to school in like Montreal or Ottawa even, I've definitely not had a lot of opportunities to practice French. So definitely take advantage of that, like Charles said. And then we can go to Adeline.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much the same as well. Like I spoke French growing up, but did not really continue this into high school. And French is not something, I'm not proud of this, but I really haven't used my French skills living in Montreal. And so that being said, you can really get around Montreal without knowing French. One thing I will say is that though it is easy to find jobs and get involved within the McGill community, it is a lot harder to find a job in Montreal if you don't speak French. So all of the work that I've done in the past summers has been in Ontario, in Ottawa, and Toronto.
That's good to know. And Kat, do you want to finish us up?
Yeah, I kind of just have the same points as before. I entered McGill with a pretty strong French background, to be honest. I did French immersion all the way up till grade 12, so I studied in English and French my whole life. With that being said, kind of tying in what Charles and Adeline said, you only need as much French as you kind of want. Because if you stay in the McGill bubble, you don't need it at all. You can get around, you can find work, and you can find friends, and you don't have to speak a touch of French at all. But if you're looking to improve it and get involved, like as soon as you kind of venture into Montreal a little bit, there are tons of opportunities to improve your French as well. So don't be afraid if you don't have it, but if you do, it's a really good opportunity to improve your French.
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like it's very open to all levels of French, all interests. And moving on to academics, are there any specific bird courses for first years or any notable professors? Why don't we start with Julianne this time?
Sure, yeah. And so I made a really terrible mistake in my first year where I thought I was going to be a math major and I took linear algebra as my elective, which was a huge mistake. I ended up becoming a bio major, as I said. And so in my second year, I took Bio 111 with Professor Hendry. That was one of my favorite courses I've taken at McGill. It was great. So I'd recommend that one. The other classics that I'm sure the other panelists can kind of touch on, but there's stuff like natural disasters, art of listening, chem of food, chem of drugs. But yeah, I'll let you guys elaborate on that.
Perfect. I think Adeline also took the bio course, so why don't Adeline, you go next?
It's actually funny because I didn't, and that's a mistake a lot of people make. Because going into first year, it's actually one of the very few courses that isn't required in an undergraduate science degree. However, it is required to enter McGill's med school. So you'll often see a lot of fourth year students coming back to do that course. So it's a mistake that I made that I hope to share this knowledge with all of you. And if you have the chance, put that into your first year schedule. I mean, I didn't take it, but Julian says it's an awesome course, so definitely do that. What I did take instead was Psych 100, which I also thought was really interesting and applicable. And yeah, definitely something that I don't regret doing.
Perfect. Yeah. Everyone who's going to McGill next year, you're in luck. Now you know if you're interested in med school, you need to take this course. So thank you, Adeline and Julien. And Kat, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I actually did take Bio 111, which was a mistake, but a happy mistake because I'm applying to McGill Medicine and I found out that I needed it 2 years in and decided that I would share that with everyone. But that being said, my main advice is to use your elective space to plan ahead. It's easy to think like, oh, like I want to throw in like random courses because you can't decide. But if you take the time to kind of like take a step ahead, your future self will thank you so much for it. Similarly to the Bio 111 thing, for example, if you take the Psych 100 course instead, there are some master's programs later on that might want psychology courses. Some med schools want psychology courses as well. I know this year I was looking into genetic counseling and they require at least 2 psychology courses in undergrad. So I was kind of mad at myself for not taking psych. So I think like the bottom line with that is to take a second to look ahead and maybe fill your elective space with stuff that you might need later down the line. It could also be like a prerequisite for an upper year course, stuff like that.
Perfect. And Charles, do you want to finish us up with this question?
Sure. Yeah, so for me, I actually didn't take any famous bird courses. To give you a perspective from the arts, faculty of arts side, I think, arts, it's not black and white. It's a lot of the assignments are writing papers. It's about doing what the prof really wants and catching that. So it's what you make out of the experience with that prof. I know we discussed earlier, take advantage of your profs, go to office hours, ask questions. If you develop that relationship and are able to identify what the professor wants, then it's much easier for you to get a higher grade in that course. And there's also Rate My Profs, famous websites online. And I've read poor reviews of professors, but I was able to, make out a great time out of it. So they are my references. So it's really what you make out of it. I would also say, take courses that you want to take. You're spending, if you're Canadian, like $1,000 per course. Do what you really want to do. When you apply for jobs, except for grad school, a lot of my friends who graduated, they didn't submit their transcripts. It's really just about graduating at times. And of course, things might change, but take what you want to take if you're spending that money into it.
Yeah, for sure. That's really good advice. Yeah, I think there's sometimes just like certain hype or like overhype about certain courses or teachers, but it's definitely different when you like go into it on your own and kind of make a judgment based on what you experience, not just on kind of what you read about. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, I believe the title, we can just dismiss that, but we'll look at the question under it. How do you manage a heavy workload? So let's start with Kat this time, and we'll go over the section maybe a little bit more briefly.
Yep. So for managing heavy workload, my biggest tip is to find a calendar system ASAP, something that works for you. It doesn't matter if it's a physical agenda, Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, Notion, whatever floats your boat. Pick a calendar system, stick to it, and put everything in there. That's going to be your best friend when managing lots of deadlines and like extracurriculars along with school and maybe even work, and also blocking off time to take care of yourself.
Perfect. Like that. And Charles, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so for arts, there's a freshman requirement that you have to take. No one tells you this, but you can actually take it. You can actually, as long as you finish it by your graduation date, you're fine. I would recommend that you finish before third year because it's very hard to get into classes. Even though you the more you're at school, you'll get priority. You know, you really want to take like be able to take the classes and you want to graduate. So do that fast. I use Google Keep to keep track of all my assignments. I also print out all the list of my readings in advance in September. So, you know, do that. Use it as a checklist. It's self-satisfaction as well when you check that off. So that's my advice on that.
Yeah, perfect. And Adeline, do you have anything you want to add as well?
Yeah, just another really good, I guess, study app is OneNote, because I'm able to sync it both from my laptop, my iPad, and I can even look it up on my phone. So it's a really good way to just keep everything all online. And so that way you're not losing like physical copies of your notes.
Perfect. And Julien?
Yeah, well, I think Kat, Charles, and Adeline really nailed it on this one. The one thing that I would add is maybe don't go out every night. You can skip Cafe Tuesday every now and then and stay in. It's good for your liver and your brain. So
Perfect. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing those tools and resources. And now we'll go into sharing brief advice that you might have on the application process and any tips that you might have. Why don't we start with Adeline?
Yeah, definitely pay attention to first of all, the campuses. McGill has two campuses, the McDonald campus and the downtown campus. And I actually didn't read the fine print, ended up applying for a program like on the other campus. And that was just a waste of one of my applications. So don't make the same mistake as that. Another thing I'll say is that McGill's acceptance deadline was a lot earlier than my Ontario school acceptance deadline. So what I did was I just emailed them explaining my situation, and they were able to push my deadline a few weeks so I could really hear back from other schools and do like a really extensive evaluation of like the schools I wanted to go to instead of being forced into one.
Cool. That's really cool to know. That's very resourceful. And Charles?
Yeah, so I applied to McGill 5 years ago, so I don't know if things changed. But McGill only looks at grades, transcript. So really, if you're looking to McGill, really focus on your grades. You have extracurriculars, that's great. They're evaluated for scholarships only. But when I applied, you had to have like a 95% average at least to even apply for a scholarship. So that's one thing. But yeah, my other advice would be go on campus visits if you can. That really helped me make my determination. So during the application process, do that, get a feel of the campus.
Yeah, for sure. Julian and Kat, is there anything you guys wanted to add on this section or? Okay,
I would just
perfect.
say that
Yeah.
keep in mind. Oh, sorry.
No,
just
go for
one
it. Go
quick,
for it. Yeah.
Keep in mind that all the incoming freshmen, especially from Ontario, so if you didn't do Cégep, you're going to have that U0 year. And so you don't actually have to declare your major until after that year. So keep that in mind when applying. You're applying to groups and faculties, and it's a very general first year. You get to try a bunch of different things before you decide what you want to do for the rest of your degree.
Great. Yeah, I think this is a really important section actually, because McGill is like in different province. So a lot of students applying from Ontario, it's quite a bit of a different process or timeline as well. So thank you for sharing. And moving on to experiences, internships, clubs, and ECs. What was your involvement in clubs, ECs, and sports during your first 2 years? Are there any regrets or cool opportunities for your program? We can start with Kat this time.
Yeah, sounds good. So in my first year, I actually didn't do any sports or extracurriculars. I was way too scared of like the course load and the workload. So I actually would say that's one of my regrets. I wish I got involved a little bit earlier. But in second year, I started kind of exploring the different clubs and stuff that was on campus. So I was an exec for HOSA, and then that's the year that I joined MCERT. So MCERT is our school emergency response team. It is really, really cool. I recommend you all apply. So with this team, you take overnight shifts and you respond to first aid emergencies on campus, which is really cool. And I love that experience. And that led to a coordinator and then a director position on the team because I liked it so much. It's super rewarding. It's a student service. Like Charles mentioned, he was involved with Drive Safe. So they kind of like go hand in hand and like students helping students. And then in my second year, I also started getting involved with stuff like team and UCA TAing. So there are that's a little extra way to like earn some cash as a student. You can kind of help out with some courses that you've taken if you really enjoyed them. So My only regret, honestly, is not joining something a little bit earlier. You find some really good friends and you can get more involved in the school community that way.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Those are really cool ECs. And then Adeline, do you want to go next?
Sure. So in my first year, I joined Meal Care, which is an organization that donates extra food from our cafeterias to the local shelter. And that was a really cool experience. I did play a few intramurals, and I was on one of the committees at SMU, which is our student society. And I would say that none of these extracurriculars I'm currently involved in anymore, but I don't regret that because it was a good learning opportunity for me to see what I liked, what I didn't like, and just take the time to like meet new people in that sense. And it's okay to like start things and then change your mind about what extracurriculars you want to get involved in. So I would say don't be afraid to explore things.
Yeah, for sure. And Charles, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I was part of DriveSafe, as Kat mentioned. I was also on the Model United Nations Secretariat, so we have a Model United Nations conference, 2 per year, 1 for university students and 1 for high school students. So I was in one of the positions organizing that. I also sat on a couple of boards for the Student Society and for the university itself. I don't actually have any regrets. Because of my experience at Model United Nations, my current supervisor at work is also a McGill graduate and was part of that. So, you never know where those connections can be found, built, and they're very great. I also, first year I wasn't involved in any extracurriculars, I only worked. And so I think I can tell you confidently that you don't need to be involved in first. It's great, but you don't need to be involved in first year to expand your network and get involved in the subsequent years.
Yeah, thank you. And Julian, do you want to finish this up?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, I was a part of the McGill fencing club since first year. So in first year, I started off just as an athlete and basically competed with McGill. And then in later years, I took on more of a leadership role where I offered lessons and coaching and then also organized our trips to competitions. I also joined SIM, which is the Students in Mind Mental Health Conference in first year. That was a really great opportunity to kind of network with some upper year students and kind of get their advice on everything from like course selection to what other extracurriculars they're involved with. And I was also part of the SMU Ski Club, which was great. I got to go and blow off some steam on the ski hill on weekends, which was really awesome. They offered discounted tickets for a club fee, and I had a great time doing that. My one regret is that in high school, I was super involved with student council and I really, really liked it. I was prime minister in my final year of high school, and I'd kind of heard that student politics at university sucked. And so I was very kind of turned off by joining student councils in university and that kind of thing. But I definitely regret doing it. I think if I was back in first year, I would have thought about maybe joining something like a departmental organization. So for example, for biology students, we have something called the MBSU, which is our student representation. And so if I could go back in time, I probably would have joined that or been a part of some other student committee.
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing your insights. It seems like there's a lot of really cool opportunities to get involved. And now, were there any first year internship or research opportunities? And does McGill support students through co-op or internship, or do you have to kind of do that all on your own? So we'll go over this section briefly. We'll start with Adeline.
Yeah, so I think it's on the slide, but in science we don't have a co-op, but I have some friends in engineering who do have co-op opportunities. So if you're interested in engineering, know that that's an option for you. And then a good way to find internships is to use the career services because a lot of jobs do get posted through there. So that's a good way to just kind of see what you can do and like be able to use that to apply through the school.
Yeah, perfect. And Kat or Charles, is there anything else you guys want to add?
I'll add a little bit just on research since Adeline spoke more for like
Sure.
internships. So in terms of research, coming out of first year, it's going to be really competitive. So my biggest advice is to like apply early and try to see if you can find stuff through like profs that you have or funded summer projects. So you can find stuff through like NSERC. Julien is supported through SURA, so that's with science, and then engineering, you can have like stuff like it's called SURE. So I would just say like look early and ask upper years for help for applying through that because it's really competitive out of first year, but it's possible.
Perfect. And
Briefly
Charles,
as well from our
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, briefly from an arts perspective, there are not many opportunities. There's an arts internship office that offers some internships, which are very cool, like the Canadian Embassy in Vienna. Those are very interesting opportunities, but they're very competitive. Out of thousands of students, only get chosen. So I recommend looking externally. Do it yourself. Ask professors. There's also the career planning service at McGill that you can ask and have appointments to refine your resume and cover letter as well.
Yeah, for sure. Take advantage of those career services at your school. And to finish with the experiences section, are there any program specific ECs and where can I find more information about McGill's clubs? So again, we'll go through the section briefly. And Kat, do you want to start off?
Yeah, for sure. So my biggest tip for finding out about McGill's clubs is going to activities night. So there's like a big fair at the beginning of the year where you can go from booth to booth and literally just check out every single club and service that McGill has. Previously, it's been switched virtually this year, so I don't know if it's going to be in person or not. It's just a really good opportunity to find all of the options. You're also going to get a lot of information from like emails and stuff, like your faculty emails will give you opportunity information and stuff like that. In terms of program specific extracurriculars, like Julien mentioned earlier, there are like student societies and unions for specific majors. So for example, like for pharmacology students, it's called PILS. For physiology, it's called Pulse. For anatomy, it's called MAX. So you can help out with those. That's the only kind of program specific extracurricular. I would say all the other clubs are kind of based on personal interest, but all of the above are good ways to get involved and meet some really cool people. It's going to be one of the most important parts of your undergraduate like time as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And Julien, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think Kat nailed it. And I think the last thing that I would add is just that on SMU's website, there's a really great list. And so if you're curious before activities night, definitely go check that out.
Moving on to residence, what was your residence experience like at McGill University? Is there any recommendations or is there a quote unquote best residence, pros and cons meal plan system? We'll start with Charles this time.
Yeah, so I stayed at C4, which is one of the hotel residences. I will say hotel residences are hard to make friends just because, it's a hotel style. But CAF food-wise, New Rise and RBC have the best food. C4 is okay, but like if you're spending the same money, you kind of want to get good value. RVC is right beside, so you can kind of go in your PJs, put a ball cap on, make sure no one recognizes you, kind of thing. Well, Citadel is also on Sherbrooke across from C4, CAF 4, but it only has a cafe, so that's something to take in mind as well. So in the Montreal winter, if you want to get food, but you also don't want to get out, think about what res you want to stay in.
And Adeline, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I was in Upper Res in Molson Hall, and it like lives up to its name. It really is up. It's probably like, I think it's like a 15-minute walk, but on a straight incline. So you really have to be prepared for that in the winter. If you don't have good shoes, like you're slipping down that hill. But I mean, it gets you outside, gets you walking. So I think it's just part of the experience, and I really enjoyed it. So my best res.
Thank you. And Kat and Julien, is there anything else you want to add? I noticed there's some similarities in where you guys lived with, but yeah, is there anything else you guys want to add?
I just have a pro tip I'll add really quickly in terms of meal
for
plan. You put a lot of money into your meal plan and you have to get one if you're in a residence. Oh my God, excuse me. My tip is just that you need a balance of $50 in your 2 accounts for the money to roll over into second year. If you don't have that, you lose the money. So make sure you keep enough money in your account to be able to kind of eat at the CAF in second year if you have anything left.
Yeah, that's a good tip. And Julien, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I think these guys kind of summarize it very well. I was also in Molson Hall. I actually lived a couple floors above Adeline. And I loved it. It was super fun, super lively. But again, a con of that is that it was super fun and super lively. And so my grades kind of suffered a little bit because of that. But there's definitely success stories from Molson for sure. So take my experience with a grain of salt.
Thank you guys for sharing. I like the pros and cons. How did you find moving away from home / out of province? So we'll start with Charles this time, since our sole non-Ottawa panelist.
Yeah, non-Ottawa, no exposure to Montreal, kind of no Quebec kind of thing. It's I didn't mind at first, but it does get difficult when you're accessing healthcare. So if you're an Ontario resident, you kind of just go to an urgent care facility and you kind of, get it for free. In Quebec, you pay about $100 or $150 health surcharge if you go to a clinic. You can get that partially reimbursed, but that's not always done. You can also go to the McGill Urgent Care Clinic, but that's also open Monday to Friday, and there's a lineup starting at 7 a.m. outside the door. So what I did was I would go at midnight to the hospital if I really needed to go. So it's kind of sad, but hospital, it's free. They'll do the transfer for you and they'll pay it off, so you don't have to pay anything. Otherwise, it was a nice change. It's a very nice vibe in Montreal. It's somewhat European. It's very different from Toronto or the suburbs of Toronto. So it was a very nice change.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely quite a big difference from all our other universities in Ontario. This is one of the only ones out of province. So yeah, and Kat, actually, let's go with Adeline.
Yeah, so I purposely chose to go to McGill in Montreal to stay close to home because I knew this would happen. And so I was really lucky to be able to really go home on the weekends if I wanted to, or I could go home on Thanksgiving and really be at home for all the major holidays. So that was something I kept in mind when I was choosing my university, knowing that I'm very much a homebody. So really make sure that you know what you want and that you're ready for those expectations.
For sure. And Julien, is there anything else you wanted to add about your experience?
Not much. I would just kind of add that in first year and especially in residence life, you're very busy all the time. And so I find myself not really having the time to feel homesick. And the other part is that you're really kind of surrounded with this community of friends and people there to support you, whether it be floor fellows or whoever else. And so you really have a great network on campus in order to kind of feel that kind of comfort of home away from home, I guess.
Thank you guys for sharing. And our last part for residents, how is transportation for getting around campus? So this time we'll start with Kat.
So like I said before, you can pretty much get anywhere you need on foot. Sometimes there's going to be a steep incline, so you're going to want to get some good shoes. But pretty much any grocery shopping and going out and going to your classes, you can get there all on foot. They're all in the same place unless you're on Mac campus where there's a shuttle to get to some of your classes. Aside from that, I would recommend getting a Bixi Pass, which is the city bike sharing system. It's really affordable and that can get you a little bit further outside of the bubble, but really your legs are going to get you everywhere you need to go for the most part.
Thank you. And Charles, do you want to go next?
Yeah, around campus, I would say you cannot walk from one side to the other side of the campus in 10 minutes, which are generally the time period between each classes. Especially when there's snow, you can't do it. So check the map first, see if it's actually doable, and then go about doing that. I also included parts to, if you're going between Toronto and Montreal, because it wasn't mentioned. I actually flew because it was only $66. And trains 55, and I live in the suburbs, so that's another $15. So it kind of made sense to just fly. It's an hour instead of a 6-hour train ride plus an hour and a half go train ride. So do what's more economical for you. I got a Nexus Pass, which lets you skip security, the security line, and it was free if you get it under 18. So I kind of, got the sweet deals and I flew. So look out for that. Yeah.
Nice. Julien and Adeline, is there anything else you guys wanted to add? Okay, so we'll move on to the last section, financial aid, scholarships, and bursaries. What are some resources both externally and internally at McGill University? Julien, do you want to start on this question?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if some of you were at the Money Hacks presentation before, but I went into greater detail with this. And if you guys want to book a coffee chat with me, I'll probably have more time to go into greater detail with all these kind of things. So I'm a student that identifies as having in need of financial need. And so basically in first year, I enrolled in the work study program, and I've been working on campus as a laboratory assistant since my second year doing that. If you're from Ontario, I highly recommend applying to OSAP. And then if you're looking for the entrance bursaries, as Charles mentioned earlier, they are pretty competitive to get. I was 1% off and didn't get mine, which was a little bit upsetting, but there's definitely different ways to finance your stay at McGill. McGill offers financial aid and the work study program, as I mentioned. And so the Office of Scholarships and Student Aid is actually pretty helpful. And so you can book these one-on-one sessions with the officers there, and they can help you gauge how much money you can expect to receive in financial aid, and also if you're eligible for the work study program.
Perfect. Charles, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I maxed out on my OSAP. I maxed out on my parental support. So what do? Look at other ethnic organizations, external awards that are provided outside the university. So I'm Korean. There's a lot of Korean associations that were giving out scholarships. The Embassy of Korea in Ottawa was giving out scholarships. So, like, look online, take advantage of those. Don't only look at McGill pages. They offer great resources, but, look beyond that. And I would also, to be clear, that there is an entrance bursary and an entrance scholarship. Entrance bursary is needs-based. That I was actually able to get, and it was renewed until I graduated. So if you are in need of financial aid, also look into that as well. So that's separate from scholarship. Scholarship is for grades, based on your grades, academic achievement, and that could, I believe, be renewed as well.
Perfect. Adeline and Kat, is there anything else you guys wanted to add for this section? Okay.
Just one more thing on
Yeah,
external scholarships. There's many out there. And I was able to get a few through my parents' workplaces. So that's just another channel to look at and see if there's anything available.
Okay.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, they're a little bit smaller, but some student groups and organizations will also run like smaller awards that are based on like extracurricular involvement or volunteering. So if like merit or like need you've like maxed out on or you can't get any more, you can check out like groups like that on campus. A lot of those will be also in those emails that you get to your like student email.
Perfect. Thank you guys for sharing. So that wraps up our panel discussion. I do know that we're running a little behind on time. So if it's okay with our panelists and attendees, we'll take a few questions in the chat, and then the rest we'll give you the contact LinkedIn from our panelists. If you want to reach out to them individually later, feel free to do that. So take a few questions in the chat. I think actually our panelists went through and were answering them while the panel was going, so that's good. So I'll just pick. Okay, so one question, is it easy to make friends during first year? So I know you guys talked a little bit about how you can make friends, but yeah, maybe we can have, if anyone feels inclined to answer this question or has any helpful advice, they can just go for it.
Yeah, I would say it's very easy in first year because you're kind of surrounded by everybody who's in the same boat as you. And so everyone's kind of starting new at this new institution with new faces. And so it's as easy as just saying hi to someone in the res elevator or during a frosh event or something like that. And so my biggest advice for making friends in first year is just say hi. You never know what you guys are gonna have in common or have similar interests in certain areas. And so it's always great to kind of just get those conversations started, and you never know where they'll lead.
Perfect. Any of our other panelists want to answer that question as well, or we're good to move on? Okay.
So one of those things is like your frosh friends might not be your friends for the rest of 4 years, and that is okay. There's a lot of chances to meet your friends, so don't think frosh is kind of the only place where you can make your friends.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Next question. Is there a diverse set of students and teachers on campus, and just general support for minorities?
I would say there's a lot of ethnic organizations, like student-based, student-run ethnic organizations, so there is support on that level. I personally have experienced a lot of racism working in Quebec, but that being said, I'm the type to kind of brush it off and kind of just fight against it. But I would say, the political situation in Quebec is not as friendly as in Ontario, but on campus, it is, there is great support. There's also support systems in place. There's a phone line called Nightline if you want to call for support. Again, their ethnic organizations, profs are very open and kind and very bearing in mind of, that minorities exist in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing. What would be an ideal grade average to get into a program in the science faculty?
So I just kind of put the link in the chat.
Oh.
So if you search it up, like there are usually admission cutoffs from the previous years for the department that you want to enter into. So within science, there are different groups and they have different cutoffs, but it ranges right now, it looks like from 92% to a 94.9%, and also with a requirement of 87% in each prereq course. So these are pretty high, they're pretty competitive. They also differ from year to year. So this, just having that grade might not guarantee that you'll get in, which means an ideal grade average is very high to say. I guess you can make that judgment for yourself there.
Yeah, for sure. And take one more question. How did the hotel res students make friends, since I've heard it's harder? So I believe 2 of our panelists were in the hotel res style. So maybe one of you guys can share about if you have any advice on making friends in that situation.
Yeah, I was at Cat 4 Sherbrooke. It is a hotel style. We had on every other floor a common room, and we also have a floor fellow assigned for every 2 floors. So for 2 floors each. So we would do kind of like a tea or coffee hour at the end of the week. I personally did not go, but that is an activity you can attend. I made all my friends through extracurriculars really, and that still lasts today. So that's what I really recommend you do. Like go to those clubs, especially in first year when everyone is new. That's when you can start making friends. It's really much easier to do that in first year than later in subsequent years. So I'm doing that.
Yeah, I would agree. I was in New Residence, which is one of the other hotel styles. I honestly had a really hard time making friends in university, and that's not something that I expected. I was very like outgoing and extroverted person in high school. I never had trouble like talking to people and finding friends, but I couldn't in first year because of how like isolating the hotel rooms kind of are. So most of my friends I found also through extracurriculars and from classes. But it's not impossible. I know a lot of people who made really great friends in hotel styles. You kind of have to be open to like hanging out in the cafeteria and like in the common rooms and stuff like that, which I could have done more of. So it's not impossible. I definitely agree that it's a little bit harder, but extracurriculars and other stuff will be your way to go if you're having trouble there.
For sure. Thank you guys for sharing.